I think it was my speakers a while ago. Now I
Yeah,
fixed it on my iPad. So
that's
yeah,
good. That's good.
should be good.
Yes. Um, yeah, no, thank you so much for doing this. Oh, let me trying to get as much. This is all new for me to be doing. It's been a big
Yeah,
learning
I bet.
for all of us, right?
Yep, yep.
um, we moved off of in person virtual into virtual learning March 12th. We were told to that our semester was over, and so then the students went back. They were on their spring break, got their stuff, and then went home. So we scattered everywhere. I have
Yeah.
students in Texas, Oregon, California, Vietnam, China, South Africa. So
Wow.
yes, so I'm so glad we could have this because a lot of professors, they decided to do the asynchronous where you just film a lecture and then students can do it because of the time zone issues and
Hmm.
just the students just figuring out how to get their routines back and lives. They had
Yeah.
independence and now they're in their parents' basements. So but there was something when we came together, I decided to do this virtual Zoom to try and do it all
Yeah.
together, and I noticed that my students were like so glad to talk and connect. And we also had this crazy thing going on that the UFC, what our, one of our aspects of sports that we watch,
Mhm.
uh, was having this storyline playing out of will they try and have fights during this pandemic or not. So it was so great that we continue to do virtual and then that the MMA community really came and supported us and became involved in these conversations and discussions. So
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I wish I had this course in college, man.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I'm going to start the class. We'll see that this is earlier than our normal time. And actually, and it's Anton Tabuna. Am I saying that? Not
Anton
Tabuena,
Tabuena. Yeah.
even professors have typos. So I was so glad you told me
Yeah.
that we've actually finished the semester last week. But my students and some other alums from Writing and Fighting and just friends of this class have said, let's keep doing them, especially because life is so uncertain and this kind of gives them, a community. So
Yeah, it's pretty
I really
cool. Yeah.
appreciate it. So hopefully, we'll see. I know, I've been told I'm supposed to look online for like chats because apparently again, I don't even know how that happens and everything. So, all right. Um, well, welcome to Writing and Fighting. This is May 14th. We are here at a special early morning. I got my coffee. Uh, not even 9 hours from the fights, which I'm sure you
Yeah.
watched and probably
Yep.
were live tweeting, giving your opinions because there were some definite moments. The Gabriel Benitez, um, as I think someone said, Esther Lynn should have had a warning before showing the shin injury there. And then,
Yeah, pretty gruesome.
right. Uh, and then, that the Smith and Chisera fight, wow, did that, go
Yeah.
super long. Like we've had these main events that have been just brawls, he is Lionheart, and I think
Yep, yep.
later on my students, like it is interesting how MMA, this whole idea of throwing in the towel by the corners, and in your work, in your second fight, you have the towel thrown in by
Yeah.
your coach. He waved off. I'd love to go through that. I love this piece. It's such a great thing for our class because it combines, you know, uh, the idea of using a writer who's someone who's an observer and is supposed to, be connecting words to the human experience. And I love when writers actually go and fight so they can kind of translate it in a different way. I mean, we've seen this from George Plimpton. He did this great fight with Archie Moore. We have, you think of Camus, like Hemingway, all of these people have been compelled by combat sports, you know. And we've had Josh Rosenblatt, we've used his text, Why We Fight, where he also chronicles, you're 30, he's a ripe old age of 40, and he does his first amateur MMA fight. And, you know, kind of chronicles along with that, you know, why we do this psychologically, physically, biologically. And I think you get at those things too, as you understand. So I really want to get into that text, Anton, but I also want to know more about you. So I need to introduce you in a proper academic, you know, session here. Anton Tabue is the MMA writer and managing editor of Bloody Elbow. You've also worked at SB Nation, Box.com. Is this SAP or SAP consultant?
Yeah,
Which I looked up online. SAP, which is a systems applications and product someone who sets that up in the field of data processing. Not the typical.
Not related at all to what I'm doing now.
I love it. So yeah, that's you know, I want to get into that. So how does a SAP consultant, you know, and I want to know where you're from and your background in school, go from that to becoming an MMA writer, an editor, and a fighter?
All right, so I guess we should start from the very start. Like, so I took up computer engineering in college, so it was not related at all to what I'm doing now. But yeah, back then I was already an MMA fan. So, and in that era, like the fandom was basically confined to like forums. Like this was before Twitter blew up. So fandom was in the Sherdog forums or the underground, stuff like that. But it wasn't really my cup of tea because like, imagine like YouTube comments, like those like unfiltered madness that happens there. So yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea. So until I found like Bloody Elbow, the early stages of Bloody Elbow, I was like, oh, I like this. There's a moderated community. There's like good writers that I really respect. So I was like, I just joined the community as a commenter, as a guy who just wrote on the fan post on the side. And eventually, like, so this was in college, like I was just juggling, I was doing it for fun. So like, I kept on writing on those fan post sides. And then like, eventually like the system that worked in the early days was like in the Bloody Elbow fan posts, like if the staff liked what you wrote, they promoted to the front page. So that just kept on happening. And eventually like they eventually asked me like, since we're promoting most of your fan posts to the front page, why don't you just do this officially for us, like join the staff? And I was like, this was just like a hobby. Like I was a fan. I was just writing, giving analysis, writing news. I was doing my thing like while in school, and then they asked me to be an official staff. So I was like, sure, why not? So I just started from a contributor, I just like kept writing, kept learning. Like a lot of people don't know this, but like through the years, like there were a lot of homegrown Bloody Elbow writers that went through the site. Like from back in the days with Luke Thomas running the site to Brent Brookhouse. Like there were lots of talented writers that were developed during that phase. Like even like 3 of the editors we have right now, we're all from like the OG Bloody Elbow days, I guess. So yeah, I just kept on. Eventually, I was working in a tech company, so I was working SAP then, and then I was juggling this side job also. So, but I still considered it like just a hobby and stuff. Like I remember my first ever paycheck was like $50 every 3 months. It was like barely anything, but I was like, but I didn't care. I loved it because like I thought like I would do this for free. Like I just love the sport so much. I would willingly do this. So when the avenue came that it can be slowly into a paid career, it just slowly grew, and then eventually I was juggling like 2 jobs. So yeah, and then like years down the road, like learning from people, I kind of learned on the job basically. Like I was a college student to working and then being mentored by all these talented writers. So I just kept on learning and writing. Then eventually I just went up the ranks, and then one day Nate Wilcox, the founder of Bloody Elbow, just asked me like, So what would it take for you to quit your day job and just be our managing editor full time? And then I was like, oh, well, okay, let's do this. Yeah, I basically quit my day job, and that was like 2014, I think. So from then on, I've been managing editor up to now.
And we have a guest to our seminar, Brian, I know I want to introduce, but Anton, you were fulfilling everyone's hope when they're a child. Like they go up in their garage and they play music for fun, and the producer sees them and it's like, will you come and start doing acts at these great arenas, and you're like, okay, I love this anyway. And now you're like the editor of it's like, Brian, I have to make a music because it's not often that you have something that you really love turn into that. And that's great. Now, and right before I'm going to get to Brian, was it hard to leave the consultancy because that's where you had your training? That's where probably.
Actually, it was like, it came to a point that I had like equal salaries for both. And I was like, how much would it, and like in my head before the offer even came, I'm like, this is getting serious. Like I can eventually like a few more increases and I can quit this day job. But everyone like especially like how folks are, like my parents were always like, what are you doing with MMA? That's not a career. Like, why are you even doing that? Like, you have a stable job in a multinational company here. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna be happy doing that. So it was a pretty easy decision. Once Nate asked, I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
That's great. That was like when I wrote my first course curriculum for writing and fighting. I was just like, is American going to go for this? Combat sports and writing. But now 3 years later, here we go. So I want to we have someone who's going to join our discussion. Brian Siskan. Brian, can you give us your background very quickly?
Hey, and it's nice to meet you, by the way. I'm an artist and a producer, and I work in a lot of different realms in terms of music and film and music for film. But I'm also a longtime fight fan, and a natural sort of process that I went through was having more and more friends or people that I figured out were actually into this, and you start to have these conversations. Almost in secret, right? Because it's this weird, thing that you're into that other people are grossed out by. And then we started a podcast because of it. So we have a podcast called the Art Fight Podcast, and we talk to a lot of creatives from a lot of different realms. Ultimately, because I feel like there's a lot of interesting parallels between the creative process and the process of fighting, and combat generally. It's this compression of the human experience, whether it's art or whether it's combat, and really combat is art, right? So anyway, so I always find it interesting to hear from people like you that have been on both sides of it, and your accounts of what you're writing immersed in the process is really a direct like the most direct example of that. Anytime we find somebody that's done something creative that is actually from fighting, I find it especially interesting because that's where everything kind of mixes together. So anyway, just happy to be here. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and a regular member now of Nancy's panels. And I actually made this one. I don't know how, but
yeah, I see you have your coffee. You're 9 hours, not even that, from the main event.
I know. I feel like we just went to sleep about an hour ago. But anyway, so glad to be here. Maybe some others will pop in, but otherwise, I'm just happy to be here.
Oh my God, morning, noon, and night I can talk fighting, but more especially, as you say, this kind of I want to say apex of where our creativity and martial arts. And my aspect is writing, but I really value what Brian, with his lens of, you're also a filmmaker, as well as a musician, and there's an idea of the visual aspects that I find compelling with this sport. So going back, Anton, where are you from? Because you're in the Philippines now, Manila.
Yeah. I was born and raised here.
Born and
So yeah.
raised. And in college in
Yes,
Manila?
here. Yes.
Got it.
Um, I flew to the US because my mom lives in the States and my grandma lives in the States. So growing up, I flew back and forth. Like I visited like every summer or every Christmas break. I'd spend a few months. So yeah, but born and raised. So
Born and raised. Now, would you travel? Do you just travel within Asia for UFC events, or did you go
uh,
to?
yeah. Before I used to cover most of the Asian shows, like almost all the UFC shows they have here. I covered it for Blood Elbow. Like sometimes I'd take photos, interviews, like do basically I'd be a one man crew since there's not I was the only Asian staff at the time. So yeah, I did photography, interviews, anything else. Yeah.
How do you interview when you're holding a camera? I mean, I guess you got to.
No, I did. That's why I focus on writing, like written interviews.
Oh,
So
got it.
I'd recorded just audio. I'd take photos of them like in the scrums and stuff, and then I'd just interview using like a recorder and then write stuff on Body Elbow. I prefer it that way rather than the raw like video
Yeah,
camera, especially. Yeah.
I give you guys a lot of credit. We were talking with Eve, Evelyn Rodriguez and Ana Isa, who work out of Brazil, and they said they would be one women crews. And
Yeah.
forget that. Wow, that's a lot of responsibility to do. Not even capture the content, but then also process it, write it, upload. So wow,
Yeah.
that it's captivating. So I'd love to go into this because I think we could do a whole show, and I'm actually going to share this screen because I want to show people your from writing to fighting. This is my Twitter. The wrong one. So what I love about this, because and just tell me what was the impetus, the inspiration, to combine this idea of I'm going to take a fight, and not just a fight. You're going to go to the national championship, Muay Thai national championship in Manila.
Yeah. I basically got thrown into the sharks immediately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's twofold. There's like deciding to fight and there's deciding to write about it. Like, um, you know how everyone always gives excuses on like I don't have time to work out, I'm too tired because I have a day job. Like those normal excuses to not work out. I had those too when I was juggling two jobs.
Yeah.
So the moment I quit my other day job, I was like, okay, now I don't have an excuse and I have a gym like 2 minutes away from my house. So I just took training seriously from then on. That was like 2014, I think.
Yeah.
So I took training seriously. So from going to like hobbyist like once a week or not even, sometimes every other week, like one session every other week just to be fit. But so yeah, I went from that to taking it seriously. And then like I started like when my, well, so my coaches are like really technical and elusive fighters. And I only do like light sparring all the time because CTE and stuff. Like, I mean, Brian probably understands this reference, but I wouldn't want to waste my shutter clicks in the gym. Like, I'd want that to be in the actual space. So anyway, so they're like, I was training with a national champion boxer and a national champion Muay Thai fighter. So they're both super technical, super elusive. So by the time I was starting to give them some trouble, not even, of course I'm not gonna beat them, but like in my head, if I can hit these two people a little bit, imagine what I can do with an amateur. So I wanted to find out, like
Yeah.
it's all about learning and improving, and I also wanted to test myself, of course. So eventually, he just said like, okay, the next time I fight, just join me and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I always want to test myself. And then that came like he suddenly just randomly one of the sessions he said like, okay, I'm fighting in I think 3 weeks or something like that. I'm fighting in 3 weeks. And then he said like you should join me. And I'm like, huh, in the same event you're competing in? And I'm like, well, what do I have to lose? Like I don't really see myself as this like super athlete monster guy. I'm just like your normal guy who likes to learn technique. So so in my head, like if I lose to people who are like full-time actual killers in the gym, like fighters like him, then I would have learned something. So in my head, like I have nothing to lose. I'm just gonna learn. So I joined, and then I find out like a few days later, he said like, okay, by the way, this is the Muay Thai National Championship, and it's a tournament. And I'm like, wow. so,
Uh,
so I ended up fighting like twice in 2 days. So yeah, it's really
yeah.
crazy for the first time.
And
Yeah.
so you also, not only does it take a vulnerability for me to go into a cage, or this is Muay Thai is in a cage,
Yeah.
uh,
Ring. Yeah.
a ring, to decide to make it public, like this tweet, you know, which I love, because it says so much about you. Guys registering are mostly MMA fighters, a URCC champ, PXC vets, national team members, and pro boxers. And I'm just here playing Pokemon Go.
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, like I'm just like this scrawny kid, like trying to, well, not a kid, but like this scrawny dude, like unathletic, like normal guy. And I see these people lined up are like killers. Some of them I covered
You
previously.
covered.
Yeah. And I'm like, damn, this guy's joining. I just saw him knock out some dude earlier.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, it was fun for me. Like that idea of like if I can hang with them, even if I don't win, if I can hang, that says a lot about me, I think. So yeah, it would be a good test. So I thought it would be fun. But about writing, about deciding to write about it, it's a
Yeah.
completely different story also. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Josh Salmon. He was a tough vet, yeah, who passed away. Um, he wrote for Bloody Elbow. He wrote about his fights. You guys should see it if you haven't yet. But
Huh.
the way he wrote about his fights was also first person. Like
Mhm.
he would like go give like all the thoughts, everything, what he was going through, from mind games to like nerves to like warming up. Like it gives you like a great idea to see how a professional fighter actually goes through that, like a high level UFC guy going through of that. So
Yeah.
I thought like I've had like a friendship with him, and then I was like, then if I ever fight, I want to do this, because like I would have a completely different perspective of your average Joe, like just stepping in there and doing this. But I think like there's like countless people who train, and there's a small percentage of those who actually eventually fight.
Yeah.
But I believe that the rest of those like wonder about it. So I thought like I could like give that insight. So I thought it would be pretty cool, especially since I'm a writer anyway. So might as well have an excuse to branch out instead of like boring news stuff to more creative writing stuff. So yeah.
That's my lane. So I'm curious, you were tweeting, were you also doing any of these posts, or did you do that at the end after your weekend?
Oh
Like this
yeah.
moment?
So you mean like when I wrote this article,
Yeah,
the feature? Oh no, I wrote it like days after.
because I want to know
Like
about that. Yeah, because I think it was Justin Gaethje said that in a post interview with Rogan or Anik, he said that he has no memory of the fight, and he said that because you have to be present. You can't. There's no time to process. You are reacting now,
mhm.
but when you read your work, there are right kicks. You can see the intent. You can see the switch kick. Did you remember all this, or did you have to go back and video? Because that's
It's a bit of both.
a bit
Yeah,
of a
since I was already planning on writing it, like the events leading up to the fight, of course I can remember that. That's not the crazy part of it. Like so since I know that I'm gonna write about it, I'm taking like mental notes. Okay, this was a significant um, feeling or event or happening. So I took mental notes about that. But during the fight itself, I had to rely on videos of the fight to sort of recreate it. So I'd watch this and then I'd remember what I was thinking at that time. So I'd merge the two and just write it. And I try to explain it in a way that sort of appeals also to non-fighters or non like MMA fans. I wanted it to be like appealing to those who simply like reading for leisure.
yeah.
Like because if I became too technical and like broke it down like one by one, people would be like, okay, this is like play by play or like an analysis in an MMA side.
Yeah.
It's not a good read anymore. So yeah, I try to keep it um targeting like everyone.
You captured that, and I want to go into some of those phrases and how you describe the exchanges in a more emotional way. I loved it. You accidentally went up to the wrong fight.
Yeah.
Ryan, this is like, and you're so open about it. I wonder if this happens more often. I can't remember, but there's a point where you go up there and they're like, this isn't your fight. And you've gotten
Yeah,
prompt.
so imagine like I'm pumping myself up. I'm like, let's go, let's do this. Like so I go up, like I'm so hyped up, and then like they say like, it's not you. You're like the next time. I'm like,
Yeah. No, that's great. I have this picture of you as we talk about some of these exchanges. Now, you know, what I love about a writer doing this is that, yes, we're getting the feelings, the emotions. Can you tell us about some stuff that the fighters have told us about? And I'm curious, with someone with your, ability to make words and describe these things, what is it like with the pain? Do you not feel the pain? Do you?
no, you don't. It's all adrenaline just kicking in. You barely feel it. Well, leg kicks you do. Leg kicks you feel the leg kicks. But yeah, shots to the head you don't really feel it. You get like
Really?
the worst shot I took in the head was like it felt like I had like scars for like less than a second. But afterwards I was good. Yeah. And then after the fight, like I started feeling like, oh shit, my shins are busted. I can't even walk. Like, how did I like fight with like this? But it's all adrenaline. It's all kicking you the entire time. Yeah.
Then, of course, you do a second fight, which
Yeah.
the day after.
Yep. I was like busted up, like
Yeah.
just limping. I couldn't even walk, and like it's funny too. Like when I showed the part about going to the weigh-ins, like I was limping towards the weigh-ins, like injured and stuff. So I was slowly taking off my clothes and like trying to get on the scale. And then the girl like handling the weigh-ins are like, cause it's obvious that I don't look like all these like chiseled up guys, like full-time fighters. Like they have a lot going on for them. Cause if you win the national tournament, you're gonna be in the Philippine team, and then after that you get a salary. So a lot is on the line for them. And for me, I'm just doing this for fun. So I guess like it was pretty obvious I was limping to the scale, like not looking like as tough as all the other guys. And then this weigh-in lady goes like, "You do know your parents raised you, so you don't have to do this, right?" And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, but it's fun. So yeah, I just thought it was funny because like she was obviously like seeing that okay, this guy doesn't belong here compared to the other people. But yeah, good story. So I thought I'd share it.
I have to say, these moments of showing the terror and the pain and the strength, your moments of levity of the humor also add to this, because when your brother's yelling, he's tired, and you're like, well, I'm tired too. And sure that this is something I actually talked about with Ant Evans, who was head of the PR at UFC for like 15 years. And he said this is something that he always questioned. And fighters are never allowed to say that they're scared or actually like make light of it. You have to be this demon in the cage, controlled. And I think that was another thing about this. You're showing that there are moments where you're just like, mad at your brother, or, can't walk to the cage. And I think that is can I ask this, and Brian, bring this in. Why can't fighters be afraid and show fear?
Well, I guess that comes with the whole machismo stuff. Like people are afraid to show like the vulnerable part, or like maybe that makes them less badass or something. I think it's like the culture, just like being badasses your entire life. That's why I'm uncomfortable when anyone says that oh, this guy's a fighter. If they call me that, I'm like, wait. I've competed, but I've covered fighters for years. Like I am nothing like them. Like I know the dedication it takes to do that, like the sacrifices they do. I always make it clear that wait, I'm none of that. I just have fun and I compete sometimes, but I don't take that mantle because I'm not really the same as most of them. Like it's
Yeah.
not even close.
Brian, do you have any thoughts about this?
I mean, I don't have any firsthand thoughts, but I do think that there's quite an array, I think, of responses that I've observed that people have, you know, but a lot of these, a lot of fighters will wildly, openly talk about being so nervous that they throw up every time and, you know, all of this, right? So you have people, I think that you're just seeing an array of fight or flight responses, right? I mean, and Anton, I think in your case, you're probably more like me where when things are really scary or really sad or whatever it is, when things are really challenging, I go to humor, and that is my coping mechanism. And I think that that's part of what I see sort of in you, and just your acknowledgement of just how absurd this is, and laughing at yourself because everybody else has sort of singled you out as the outsider. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
But what I wanted to say about that really quick though is I think it's neat how, because you were in that position, you got a particular, everybody else is forced to sort of play the role and keep the bravado levels very high and the, you know, all this, and like, this is what we do. But when someone like you is coming into that scenario, it diffuses, I think, probably a lot of that, because you know, like you said, the employee, the woman that's talking to you is like, you know, you don't have to do this, which even further sort of highlights the precept that people have about the people that do this, you know, versus the people that don't have to, you know, like that's a weird way of putting it. Also, there's not this category of intellectually curious and physically enough capable people like you to do it. But I think that in terms of the fear response, I see it's fighting is no different than anything else in life. You know, like when people are under duress, they have an array of responses, and some of them are more maybe tolerable than others, or more functional than others, you know. But that would be my observation. Oh, and by the way, you mentioned Josh Salmon.
Yeah.
You know, it's that is a brutal loss. He was so talented and had so much to offer. I only met him once. It was many years ago when he was fighting in the XFC small promotion here. And it was very brief, but I got to sort of see how he worked, and, you know, I got to see him win a fight. And I think that he is one of those people that is the kind of people that we're always in pursuit of, the people that can adequately straddle the actualities of fighting on a very high level with the absolute humanity and objectivity and humanistic point of view, you know, at the same time. So I can see how that would be a very interesting or inspiring experience for you to have intersected with him.
Yeah, he's such a talented guy. Like when I was editing his work, I was technically like, so when he was writing for us, I was his editor. And then I was always joking around with him that how can you be this good at fighting and can like snap me like a twig in like 2 seconds, but still be able to write better than me? That's what I always like joke to him about. Like, are you like out here to take my job now? Like, this is not fair. I always joke about him like that. But yeah, he really inspired me a lot. Like when he wrote his book, when he wrote for us, like it was just good how he was able to capture those emotions, and I wanted to do that, but in a completely different perspective of like just someone just starting out rather than just being on a high level already. So yeah, all my fights, I'm not sure if it's all of my fights, but most of my fights I had like the Josh Sundance patch just to honor him, because he's really the one who sort of inspired me to pursue this and to write about it. So that's always credit to him, like this entire time.
I wonder if his I mean, obviously he had, you know, things that were working against him. You know, I wonder how much that, and, you know, it's, you look at this with any artists or creatives, you know, you think about, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix, or like, you think of any of these people that are sort of mercurial and sort of this explosion of a talent and a personality and a spirit as being almost like that's not sustainable in some weird, there's some universal truth that we haven't established yet about this, right? But if Jim Hendrix were still alive, it would be like, how the hell is this even possible? Not because of drugs or whatever, living life in a hard way, but more about just when you're such a channel for sort of larger concepts, the spirituality or the knowledge or the awareness. Some people I feel like are on a plane that is just not sustainable. And I think that's why when you talk about, it's funny to hear you say, that you were editing his work and like, oh Jesus, this guy's coming for me, right? Like this guy's so good,
so damn good,
like effortlessly. But I think that there's some people that just are so, their fire or whatever it is just burns so hot that's the temperament and the temperature and the manner in which they flow through the universe. It's a quicker, brighter burning thing. I don't mean to make any light of his circumstances because it's awful, but I can't help but feel like there's got to be some tie in there. I wonder if did you see a lot of that coming, or because when you were editing his work, that was really that was a real turn for him. It was a reveal in a lot of ways. A lot of people, that was, at least for me, it was like, oh, there's a lot more going on here, but then it wasn't long after that he had his problems,
he actually wrote a book, like he delved into that. He had a lot of demons growing up, like he was battling addiction and stuff, even his partner at the time, who also like tragically passed away. So he was dealing with a lot of things, like even growing up, like, so he detailed that. And when I read, he also like gave me an early copy of that book. So when I was reading that, I was like, damn, this guy, to come from situations like that and to have all those hardships and still like produce like beautiful content like this, I was like, this is just amazing. Like, talented guy. He also sings, he also does all these fights, like he does a lot of shit, and I was like, how are you this good? Like,
So,
yeah.
Brian, you're also making me think, his book, The Housekeeper, Love, Death, and Prize Fighting, which, was critically well reviewed. And I'm wondering why I haven't had it on my syllabus. And this is where I'm thinking this end of, maybe jealousy, but I think we want to paint him as a fighter. There's no way he could be a good writer. That we want.
That's what I thought initially too.
And we have this conversation with gender that some people think, oh, you're a pretty female, you can't really know martial arts that well because you're either pretty or knowledgeable or male, as sometimes we but no, it's interesting. I'm going to add it to my syllabus because, I haven't really I haven't read it. I've read his other work and his work on Bloody Elbow. But I think it might have even been my bias of that's, because there is some genre of, other, biographies of fighters, which are in a different genre. They're good in their own place, but this, he was doing something more. So yep. I'm glad we brought him up. Yeah, thank you.
And what's great about that, it's not just like the entire book, it has themes about fighting, but it's really not. It's like, it's an actual story. It's like, it will tug on your heartstrings, like for sure. Like, it's not, you'd think you're reading a book about fighting, but it's so much deeper than that, but it's so good. Yeah.
And then here you are saying like, I have nothing to lose. I think this is hilarious, by the way. You're like, I had nothing to lose. It's like, you have to be young to think that way, right? Like, you have a lot to lose at all times, especially if you're not taking this seriously.
Yeah, but yeah, of course I took it seriously, but like in my head also, like I knew like if my fight came down to like, if it ended up as a war, like an absolute back and forth brawl, I knew like my opponent would be more motivated than me. I knew that they have more to lose than me because I know that I'm doing this to test myself for fun, to learn more. But I know that that's a lifestyle for them. They're the actual fighters here. So in my head, like knowing that, I have to train harder. I have to be way more technical than that person. I know that they're already going to be stronger than me because, like, to give you an idea, I'm a hair under 6 feet and I'm 135 pounds right now. So when I fought MMA, I cut weight to 125. So imagine, like, I'm the scrawniest like flyweight in the world probably. So so I'm coming in there like not the most powerful guy, not the most athletic guy. And on top of that, the motivations of actually facing like an actual fighter with their livelihoods on the line. I have to be more technical than them in order to win. So it forced me to like take it seriously. And I had good coaches and training partners to help me with that, of course. So yeah, it's
It's good to have low expectations, right? I mean,
that's awesome.
I had, you know, I had an older brother that was much larger than me, and we would fight, you know, every day. You know, my entire upbringing, I got beat up basically every day by my older brother. That's what you're supposed to do. I remember going into my fights with my older brother when I was a kid thinking, if I can just get one shot in, just one clean shot, I know that he's going to murder me after this. And like, I'll just have to turtle up and just hope that somebody finds us and stops it, you know? But I remember just going into it thinking, I remember being beaten up while I'm being beaten up, thinking like, I got that one shot in and like being happy about it. So it's a weird thing, right?
Yeah, I was exactly like that towards my coaches. Like I had two coaches who when they fight, they're super elusive. Like let's say Dominic Cruz level without the weird footwork, but that elusive. Like so every time I'd think like I'd hit him once and then he'd hit me like 8 times. I'd be like, I got you once. If I can hit you once, I can hit some random stranger, like a random amateur. Like I can hit them. I'm pretty sure I can hit them like twice. So yeah, that was my mindset.
For life, you know, to have you know, if you just get one shot in, you know, so you should really thank your brother for beating you up, because that's all you needed in life was one shot. And then, yeah, Anton, I also have to think it's interesting what you say about having less on the line. And I love the Marvin Hagler line. It's tough to get out of bed to do road work at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping in silk pajamas. Hagler Hearns, one of my favorites. You know, it seems that I'm curious, as even as fighters get, you know, more successful and are getting higher paychecks, you know, do they have less on the line, or, you know, now you're in where I probably you want to get that title shot and stuff like that, so that's motivating you. But there is an economic thing where if you're fighting out of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I guess Dana White was worrying so much that McGregor was never going to return after the Mayweather fight. Like, he's good. Like, like he doesn't need to fight anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does motivate a McGregor then?
I guess the glory, I guess. I don't know. He must need that. Like, a lot of these fighters like have this drive to be the best ever. Like even the lowest level people, they already have that mindset that they're already the best. I just need to prove it. So like, I guess even the highest levels in McGregor, like he still has that, oh, Khabib the champ? No, I'm still the best. I'm still the best. I have to prove this. I have to show this. I guess that's his main motivation. I can't speak for him, but that's how I see it.
It's so funny that you say that there are a lot of fighters who already know they're the best. They just have to prove it. So that's where, because I think that writers and fighters, we're both trying to make sense of the world. We're both, you know, putting forth jabs in a way. That's where I see a distinct departure, because I think most writers, hate our work. We don't think we deserve, we are, you know, whenever we write, we're like, oh, this is self-fulfilling, you know, or it's not good enough. So it is interesting that there are fighters, you have to have that though, right?
Yeah, I think like elite athletes, like you see this in other sports also. Like they have this like insane amount of self-confidence, like bordering on delusion already.
Yeah.
Like you have to see that, like from Jordan to Kobe to like all these other athletes, they always like from day one, they're always like, okay, I'm the best. I'm gonna prove it. And like, yeah, it's just an interesting thing to observe, because I'm the opposite there. Like I don't
Yeah.
think I'm anything special, and I just want to try and see where I am at. Like,
I feel like that people are basically either juggling one or the other. They want to either be dominant, they want dominance, or they want acceptance.
Hmm.
And I feel like from an artistic standpoint, you're not putting work out being like, I want to kick the shit out of everybody else, with my work or something. And I'm the best, that seems like it's actually defeating to the actual work itself. So we tend to do the opposite, right? Like deprecation. I don't know. I'm just putting this out into the world, and then there's some natural truth to it. I don't know. It'll either work or it'll resonate or it won't. Versus, having to delude yourself into being like from an artistic standpoint, it's like, what do you even get out of being the best? How would you even calculate being the best?
yeah,
I don't know, like all the subjectivity. But when you get into a situation where that's what we love about fighting, it's the clarity of one force against another force to some known outcome. And that's why it's so upsetting when we don't get clarity, when we've set up everything to get that clarity, and then all of a sudden there's a judge problem or a stoppage or some goofy thing. That's why it makes us crazy, I think, it's because this finally we have some absolute way of understanding this, So I do think it's sort of like we're always negotiating this parallel between dominance and just acceptance.
And
yeah. I think that also differs with from creatives and like athletes, because like when you have like you're just trying to be creative, trying to create something beautiful versus like trying to dominate a competition, win, and like rise to a certain category. Like of course they have different motivations, different definitions of success, but I guess the athletic standpoint has an inherently more competitive state. So I guess that's where the different mindsets come in.
Yeah, and I don't mean to even impart also artists absolutely can be competitive.
Yes, of course. Yes, of
But
course.
it's in a different way. And obviously the implications are never the same. And but people toiling with their inner selves and trying to work this out is not an easy thing. I think that it's maybe perhaps seen as lighter, like, oh, you just made a nice picture or something. It's like, yeah, but for me to see it that way and to make it that way, I had to endure a lot of experiences and a lot of things to get to the point of why I see this as being so critical to make this statement. So I mean, yeah, it kind of, but nothing will ever equate to being punched in the face. That's what's so amazing about what you've done, and I agree with Nancy, and I wanted to say the same thing, where it's like your account of this is so natively present and observational in this way that is very it's almost like your inner self, your inner voice is so calm, not worried about the outcome necessarily, finding humor. It really is I think the perfect, because that the outcome of this is not even necessarily about the fight. It's more about the written piece and the written and the cataloging of this experience to share with other people. So even with all that, like you're straddling both of those things, and you somehow, like, I think surfed it like sort of perfectly. And it does satisfy also this sort of morbid curiosity, this kind of, we get to be a passenger in a way that feels most akin or like to what, if I were to do it, I feel like that's like your experience is as close as I can get to being neurotic and insane and whatever, creative, but actually being in that situation.
Yeah,
so
well, thanks. That's a good compliment. Thank you.
yeah, well put, Ryan. You did serve this up, because I think what you were talking about, what appeals to us for artists, musicians, that artistic space is because there are some people who call out, I think Kanye West will say I'm the best, and that it serves a different purpose. I don't see like, well, why should I care about what your work is? What I think appeals to us in our artistry is when an artist is vulnerable and shows us what they're going through, and shows us a side of the human aspect that we can't usually see, that they've uncovered. And so again, I think you're right that, Anton, what you've done, where as fighters have to have this portrayal of dominance and I've got everything in control, you gave us kind of a really good insight of these are the emotions going on, and this, these are the feelings that, you know, I think of those great PR packages they do to shut up a fight with a fighter going through stuff with the chilling music and stuff like that. Brian, am I right that this gives you an even more intimate sense?
Yes, it does, absolutely. But it's also through the prism of what can be in some ways manufactured story, or you're looking at it from a PR standpoint. So some of those stories are absolutely true and absolutely riveting and real. And then others, you're sort of wondering, are they really grasping for a story? And how could they be grasping for a story when stories are everywhere, especially with these people and these lives? You know, but I think that sometimes I think there are narratives that have to be propped up and then kept going for no reason. I mean, I don't know. It's almost like you can read a book, you know, it's gosh, it was really good for the first half and then it fell apart, you know, or I don't know. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I feel like that the stories are always there. I don't know if they're always told the right ways. And when I see countdowns and things like this, I sort of, I feel like there's a long way to go with a lot of that. But yeah, you're right. And, you know, the more vulnerable and the more honest, the more magnetizing, I think,
Yeah.
The characters imminently are. And when you feel like when you're talking about McGregor and Anton, you're having to say like, I don't know, this is what I think is my best guess, or this is what I feel is kind of really going on. I mean, that's one of those indications of like, nobody really knows like what's going on. All we're trying to do is follow the paint by numbers of what the PR kaleidoscope is creating for us, you know, because on one hand, you've got, within the case of McGregor, you got all these allegations, you got all these things going on circulating. Meanwhile, this sort of goodwill sort of campaign during COVID. And then I don't know, like all of those things are real. So at the same time, why are they focusing on what they're focusing on? Or you're constantly having to distill or filter that, you know. I wonder if in your work, you know, it's like the perpetual challenge, right? To just peel back the layers of like, I know that I'm supposed to speak to this ongoing narrative that you've crafted or that's been given to me, but I'm interested in something completely different.
Well, the good thing about my writing, at least, like win or lose, it's a good story for me. Like if I lose badly, there's all these emotions that come in. Actually, even when I win, there's like way too much emotions that I share also. But yeah, so I mean, it's always interesting to me, and that's the thing also. Like I don't have to fabricate anything. I just need to share what's real and hope people like it. So it's more of the creative side rather than the athletic achievement of it all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, and Brian, I have to say, like, yeah, I love those packages. I really do, because I want to learn what you know, yes, I love to see a good chess match in a ring of strength, but I also love to see that, you know, someone, their sister had hard times and this is who helped them, you know, because it's the storyline, the people that I'm also invested in. But I also think there's space for what Anton is doing. And so I'm just glad to see it. And, you know, we've also seen like Julie Kedzie has written, Ian Heimnish, I think I'm saying his name. He did something for the Player Tribune. And again, I think that, you know, Darren Till is a good example of someone who kind of has this character, right? He's calling people out. I can't even keep track of what he does. But what I really loved is after I forget what UFC that was, with Nate Diaz and Masvidal, the BMF, New York, Madison Square Garden. He fought on that, and he was very honest in the post interview saying that, you know, he was scared as hell, and he said he even contemplated faking an injury. And I was like, that's the Darren Till I like. Okay,
Yeah.
stay in that
He
lane.
kind of changed too. Like after those losses, like he was more honest and more vulnerable about stuff instead of like using the McGregor persona of like I'm like this brash like persona. He suddenly became like he's able to laugh at himself. He's able to like open up and be vulnerable. And I really love the new Darren Till, honestly.
Yeah. I know. And it is interesting, Brian, when you bring up McGregor, and Nurmagomedov, I think it was last night, we've learned that Khabib's dad is very ill and in a coma. And, what did Conor McGregor do? He wrote like, praying for you, man. Your dad I have so much respect for your dad. What was it, 3 years ago, where he was, saying stuff that people were very negative, things against his religion. It shows you a level here. You're talking about this, Brian, that it's almost like the public has to carve out, okay, wait, what's real? Wait, I thought you hated him. And, do you think that we can have both things?
I mean, if you're asking me, we have to have the circus, because that's what sells, is the circus. But I do think that there's more opportunities to have, and I think that it's happening, and it's happened a lot over the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, the level of media and inquiry and content and the documentary, and there's been a lot more avenues, I think, for people to really get a sense. I mean, once, like, for people like us, what makes us so attracted to all of this is because you feel like you've uncovered some secret world, and then you want other people to have insight into this secret world. And how many times has it been ultimately frustrating where, like, a friend of yours, not that we're in the business of conversion, I'm never trying to convert someone, but if people ask, I'm going to tell them why I'm interested and why I find it so compelling. So I might plant some seeds in a conversation I'm having, and then I find out they're like, oh yeah, well, I watched this, countdown or whatever for this fight coming up for these people I didn't know. And I mean, that was interesting and all, but like, I don't think this is for me. It just seems like it's kind of, you want people to get the authenticity first, but you have to, it takes seasoned sort of consumers of this like us to sort fact from fiction and know what to question and know what to where to suspend your disbelief and like table that for a minute. That might be a thing, that might not be a thing. Like, so much of the pursuit of being a fight fan is really just truth seeking about the actualities of what the hell is actually going on. We want to see the documents. We want to see the contracts. We want to know everything that's going on. And that's always the ultimate curiosity, but it's not about like to bring these people down or to expose anything. If anything, it's the opposite. It's like, with less, it's kind of like in a relationship when you first start dating somebody, like, I don't know, be yourself, and then it works or it doesn't, but at least you figured that out, but it seems like a lot of these fighters, like what you're talking about, like, it takes years sometimes to decode and have them put their armaments down and stop trying so hard to be, this other thing. I mean, that's the bane of John Jones. That's the bane of a lot of fighters that we struggle to navigate, whether we like them or not, or whether we appreciate them, or whether we hate them, or whether we want them in jail, or whatever our opinions are that we're trying to get to. It's like you have to do investigative work almost as a fan.
That's why I actually like those pieces that aren't designed to promote a fight. Like, if there's a long form about this fighter, but this fighter doesn't have anything coming up, he's not doing this to promote this event, that makes it inherently more real for me. That's why I like Josh Salmon's work, and now that's why I convinced Roxy Modafferi to start writing for Bloody Elbow also from time to time. Right. So yeah, so when she shares her experiences, like, especially her, she's also like a writer, a school teacher, like, so much experience in martial arts. Like, when I see like her in-depth thoughts on all those fights, especially like when there's controversy, when there's like all these challenges she has to blow past by, those for me are always like way more interesting than strictly like countdown shows or those primetime videos. I mean, I like the primetime videos, but I still think it's more designed to sell something rather than to just show and reveal something about the person.
No, first of all, I love Roxy. I have her book on positive thinking that I go back and look at to help my, when I'm in one of those funks.
How's that going for you?
It's been cracked a lot, let's just say, in the last few months. So I recommend, I think it's like positive thinking. I'll put the title out somewhere. But Brian, it's so interesting you say that, because Colby Covington's one that you're bringing up to me, where he's carved out this persona, right? The MAGA lover.
Did you see Anton's Colby face?
I just did. I would say. Colby Covington.
I just can't stand his authentic. I mean, like we were just talking about it. Like I prefer real. I prefer authentic, and like none of his persona is even like charismatic. None of it is even like gonna sell anything. It's one thing to have like McGregor and Till like being this like larger than life persona that sells, but there's one thing that you're just being like a douche to a lot of people. You're spoiling Star Wars shows. Like you're doing all these things just to rile people up, but it's not like pro wrestling heat where you get like you want to hate watch this guy. You just want him to go away. That type of heat. So like I think he's failing in that marketing sense. But that's just me.
Anton, I wish he would listen to you, because the other thing that kind of is very interesting about that is that people will say, well, actually, he's a nice guy if you really get to know him, and he's not a douche. Supposedly, he still does charity work, but he just doesn't bring cameras around. Like he'll go to veterans hospitals, and I'm like, what?
Show that.
How do you not show that? You're going to show, yourself with, I don't want to talk about women in any sense, but like that's the vision, or we know you're not reading Donald Trump Jr.'s book, because you don't.
He read the forward like 18 times and never went past like page 2 or something like that. I'm like, come on.
One of those press conferences, he's like, did he say Jeffrey Epstein was murdered? And I'm like, dude, you're not even get the guy's name right. And so I agree. So it's interesting, man, if he would ever kind of say, well, that was an act, where I don't know if he can do that.
He kind of does though. He kind of says like, when people get mad at him, like, well, it's marketing, it's for that. And I'm like, so not only are you breaking your persona that wasn't good to begin with, you couldn't even maintain it properly. Like, if you stick to one side, like decide on something that works and do it. Like,
see, so that's a great point. And here's what I think about it all. Andy Kaufman to me is the ultimate example of how to do this the right way. And you have a higher creative cause that you are working towards that may be above and beyond your immediate audience, right? Or whatever, but there's some really high level creative work going on. The problem with Colby is that he just got the first part of it, right? Just the incite people in the most polemic, way possible or whatever, just be that person. He's got it like halfway. He just doesn't have the actual artistic game or creative he doesn't have a desired outcome, I don't think, directly drawn to his behavior. He's just trying to do whatever. And then the more antics or energy it creates, that's the only validation of success. What would be amazing is if he, just like you said, he breaks this character that's not very well defined and is not very consistent. If that were his thing, that you're actually watching somebody wrestle with the absurdity of this character with trying to be really deeply human and authentic, and he's doing a little bit of that, not like vaguely leaning back and saying, well, this is an act and whatever, to be openly troubled by his own, his own mind, right? Like, or whatever, like that would be amazing. That would be art. Like that would be a really high level thing. And then when you think about it, it's really close. It's like, I wish I could just talk to him, because I'm like, man, like you've actually, because right now we're talking about you. It's working. I mean, it is working, but you just need to round the corner with this. It's almost like you just need to lean into it a little bit more and accept the totality that you are a divided person. And then you are articulating the imagery of division and derisiveness. There's something to this in this time. It could be really powerful. It's just not quite executed very well. But yeah, so it is funny to see like how, he doesn't, if everybody knows the truth, that's, people are still thinking about it in the wrestling way. But that's why, again, Andy Kaufman is the example. Like, I think that he was the blueprint, whether he meant to be or not, for all of this, the intergender wrestling champion and, all this and being in Tennessee, and just his things with Jerry Lawler and Memphis, Tennessee. I mean, just the mockery and the absurdity of it. If he just needs to notch it up a little bit more, and I think that he'd be in a good place. But it's kind of too little too late also for him.
Yeah, and the thing is that takes a lot of skill. Like Like people always like MMA fighters always think they can jump to pro wrestling as if that's an easy thing to do, but it takes a lot of skill to know how to like not only deliver promos but actually develop a character. Like that's something that differentiates like Chael Sonnen from Kobe. Like he one person actually knows how to deliver lines and stick to a persona to sell and make you want to watch him lose instead of just like riling people up and wanting him to just like go away. So it takes a lot of skill, I think. And I'm not sure if Kobe has that. I mean,
Well, if there's a one lesson here from class, we're telling Colby Cumming, take a note from Andy Kaufman. That's a that's a lesson from the class. But well said. Now we're rounding out. We're over an hour here, so I want to make sure we continue some threads. Your coach on your second match, you got through 2 rounds,
Mhm.
and he, you had, you were definitely losing on points on that second round. What about the first round?
First round, it was close and competitive, but I thought I lost on points because Muay Thai scores heavily on trips and kicks. So I was landing, I could barely kick. I was using one leg to kick. I couldn't kick with my left because my toes were sprained, and I was worried that if I hit it, like the match would be over. Like I'd just go down in injury. So yeah, anyway, first round was competitive, but I was losing a point. Second round, I clearly lost. Like he landed a bunch of leg kicks, and I was like, damn. But I was in no way like rocked. I was in no way like gonna be stopped. So I was like, I wanted to continue. I knew I didn't have like I knew it's unlikely that I was gonna knock the guy out on the next round, but I wanted to try. But then my coach stopped it, and like then there's this rush of emotions, like, don't, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And then like after a few seconds, he's like, no, I'm saving yourself. I'm saving yourself from you. Like I'm saving you from yourself, sorry. And then like I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. I really get it. But after like all the emotions start rushing in, like, damn, I should have done that. I should have done this. No, no. But yeah, looking back, it's definitely a good decision. Like I was so injured and I shouldn't have even been there.
So
yeah.
great to hear that. And did Muay Thai, did they throw in the towel more often? We'd see it in boxing a lot more. Because we have to look at the last 2 cards. We've had instances, especially I think with Teixeira and Smith, where Smith is telling it was between the 4th and 5th, I believe, saying that I don't think I have teeth. I can't feel my teeth. He'd been rocked, and now we know he has an orbital break. He like one tooth is in the back of his mouth, and it's crazy. That I understand, you guys. He's Lionheart. He wanted to die on the sword, but why can't the coaches step in more?
I think like with it goes 2 ways. I think like boxing learned the hard truth. There's so much death in boxing in 12 rounds. From 15 rounds, they dropped it down to 12, and even then, there are a lot of people still dying. So, experienced coaches, they know their stuff. They know like it's not worth it. There's always like a bigger risk than just losing this fight. You literally have to live the next day, live to fight another day. So I think in MMA, they still haven't grasped that concept. Plus, the whole idea that we have small gloves, and when you hit someone, you're more likely to drop. That gives them like bigger, like crazy comebacks in MMA. So they always think like, well, that could be us. And I'm like, well, there's also the other spectrum. Well, that could be like your, well, knock on wood, but like it could be a death in MMA if everyone was acting like that. Like if we had that mentality, then no one would ever stop a fight. Like, oh, well, he can still fight. Like even a referee could have that mindset. Imagine if a referee would be like, well, maybe next round he can do it. Like that's going to lead to a lot of deaths and unnecessary stuff. I think MMA corners really need to learn to protect their fighters from being fighters, because fighters will fight. Yeah. Like he's literally Lionheart.
Yeah. And even you could say you don't call yourself a fighter, but you wanted to, even though it would have been you'd have to really like get a knockout or something in that 3rd round. You wanted to continue, so you understand how powerful that is. I have to say the other thing though, the difference with boxing and MMA is the purse, right? Boxing, they don't have a win bonus. It is one purse.
That's a major factor also.
That I think you know, what you could do with stopping a fight, that fighters like, you are taking half my salary away. There's always that puncher's chance, right, that I could get it back. And so I think that there's that perspective that the coach, you know, because they always say, I've told my coach I'm going to go die, you know. I think I heard that like 2 times. Gaethje said it, you know. I don't know who else, Cruz. And you know,
Adesanya also said it. Yeah, he was
yeah,
like, "I'm ready to die." He was telling his opponent, like, "I'm ready to die." I'm like,
ready to
"Let's
die.
go."
So then you have this personal relationship as a coach, you know, but I do think though, if they didn't have, you know, and again, this is something about MMA we haven't really gotten into, the fact that they still have a win bonus, which, you know, if we really look at it, it's basically you're fighting, and if you lose, you get half your salary taken away. I don't call it a win bonus. I call it a losing penalty, because of what you're doing to get to a fight. And, you know, I don't think it's more motivating. In boxing, we don't have this.
It motivates you less, I think. Like, I bet like they thought like if you have a win bonus, you're gonna fight more, fight harder to win. But no one needs that motivation to win. And like, I mean, if anything, it's gonna make fights more boring, because like now I'm gonna fight to be safe.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not careful, I might lose my entire purse. But if I want to be exciting, I have to take risks. So I mean, especially for a guy like Gaethje, he deserves like a full price, win or lose. You're getting what you paid for. Like, just
There are those,
if anything, you might motivate him to be safe, because he's gonna lose like a lot of money if he doesn't fight smart. So yeah, I think it's counterproductive. I think it should be scrapped and just give full purses to everyone, like how it should be.
No, and I think we should have this value, because you saw the wisdom from your coach, who said, I was saving you. You know, you don't need more head trauma. You don't need your legs to have any more, especially if it's highly unlikely you will win. And I also think like that should be something, a quality of a coach and trainer that we should value, is that they're looking out, because also the more damage you take, you're right. The next fight, it's going to compromise their whole career. So,
or even worse, you might not even have a career after. Like, it's not. There's way too much risk in the sport already as it is. We have to lessen it. Like take care of your fighters, guys. I mean, like, they rely on, like, you have to save them. I mean, from themselves. They're so tough. They're all badass killers. But at the end of the day, the job of the coach is not only to train the fighter, but also to look out for those fighters.
Yeah.
And I think like most MMA corners are failing in that regard.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, we have gone over, but I have to end with some predictions, because, you know, we have the card on the 16th, which is Harris Overeem, and a co-main with Hill Gedalia. And then the next card's not till May 30th, I believe. And that's hopefully, you know, I think that's all hoping that Vegas or the Nevada State Athletic Commission recommissions combat sports. So let's just do let's just talk about those fights, because it may be a while. And I just, you know, although we have Fight Island, so that's out there.
Fight Island is real.
It is real. I saw the t-shirts. So let's go first with Hill Gedalia. Until Hill came to our class, you know, in the very beginning, like end of March, and it was so great, because that was one of the beginning when my students were still scattered, and you know, and I'm like, well, guess what? We have a UFC fighter coming to class, you know. So I was just like, thank you, and you're giving us a purpose, motivation here. And she had her husband with her, and they were doing, I loved it, she called it medieval style training, you know, in the backyard with like blocks and, you know, what you can do. And I love this because I love her personality, how she's a gamer, cosplay, really sharp. You know, I think she got her BFA, and she's worked in animation. And then she's a short notice queen, right? I mean,
that's why everyone loves her. Like,
yes.
She fights.
She's past Cerrone.
Yeah.
And then though, Gedalia, I got to set her up. You know, she's someone who's been at the top of this division. She, you know, had 2 fights with young Jacek that were pretty good fights, back and forth. She's obviously comes out of Brazil with that background. And she's kind of moved around, I think, camps. She's in New Jersey, but then I think she may also go to Albuquerque. I don't know if that's with or somewhere. It might be MMA Factory, or the other one that's in New Mexico. Is that in Albuquerque? I can't remember. She's kind of moved around. And she hasn't fought, obviously, at the frequency lately as Hill. So what do you think about this fight?
Well, I have to preface this, like, it's so hard to make predictions now, knowing that everyone is actually doing like those medieval training. Like, you don't know how they're training or if they're even training. Maybe it's all like burpees at home. Like, they can be doing like mostly strength and conditioning only without training partners. So it's really hard to accurately predict anything. But like in that fight, I'm always rooting for Angela Hill because of all the reasons that you described. But I don't know. I think she's gonna have problems with Gadelha's like physicality. Like, I think she's more athletic, stronger, and she might just muscle around Angela Hill. But Hill has been improving a lot. So if it stays at range, maybe she can do really well. And clinch striking, if it stays that way, sure. But I don't know. It's gonna be a tough fight. Like, she might get like grinded out on the fence and on the ground. I don't know.
I know. But I'm just so happy co-maining. My husband, he was so nice. He bought me her Reebok fight kit sweatshirt because she got one, and so it's supposedly coming in the mail. Do you have any thoughts on Brian, or do you want to get to the main event here?
The only thought I have actually is the fight that's strangest to me that I'm most interested in is actually Matt Brown fighting on this card on the prelims.
The Immortal.
Yeah, and I just think that's I don't know. I love Matt Brown, and I don't know. I feel like he's one of those that sort of coulda, woulda, shoulda, and was right there, and all this, maybe age and timing and some other things didn't work out for him. But I'm super excited to see him fight, irrespective of the outcome. So strangely enough, that's one of the fights I'm most excited about. As far as Hill, Gadelha, and all that, I agree with Anton. I mean, why are we even? I mean, I don't know. It's just like a crapshoot right now. Like, who knows what's even going on? Because even with the variables of training, then you have the variables of the experience and the travel, and then the being there, and then the being weirded out by everything that's going on, or how are you handling all this? And like, if I was there, I would be micro-examining every step of the protocol at every point, being like, okay, well, I don't understand. If we're wearing masks, then let's wear masks. But if we're not, like that stuff would be it might be really beneficial for a fighter to have something to get really worked up about that's not their own game, and what their worries or concerns might be with their body or whatever else. So, I mean, I don't know, just how's it going to be to fight when you all of a sudden feel like the room's just kind of watching you and it's quiet? I don't know. You don't have, if you're one of those fighters that needs the crowd behind you and you kind of feed off of the energy, then you're probably in a bad place. I mean, I don't know. So it's all a wash to me. I'm just excited to watch it.
Yeah, this entire thing's going to mess with people's like mental states too, like not just the physical. Yeah. Good point.
Very good point. Now, Alistair Overeem versus Harris. Walt Harris. So they are actually including the storyline. I saw a promo about, the horrific event of his stepdaughter being kidnapped and murdered last fall, where he had to bow out of UFC DC that was against Overeem. So that's when Rosenstruck took his place. So it is interesting that, I think we're all going to be seeing, with this fight, we're going to be, what is the headspace of Harris?
Yeah, even adding to like the entire what Brian just explained, like the whole corona thing, like and then lack of training, that's gonna mess up with your confidence, not even considering like personal tragedy. Like it's plus they're heavyweights, so who knows really what's gonna happen.
Oh my gosh. What happened to him, winning that fight with Rosenstruck, and then at the end that horrific, cut. Esterling got a great shot of it, so I have to be happy about that. no, I think that one problem I'm having with that fight is I also love Overeem because he's been around forever. I feel like I kind of watched him in, kickboxing and K2 and, but if he wins, I will feel bad for Harris. And so that's why I'm going to watch that with like my eyes covered. I don't know. Because, now if Harris wins, that'll be a different effect, right? You think like,
Imagine being in the position of Overeem, where you're like, I have to go beat the hell out of this guy that has been through the worst trauma you can ever imagine as a human being. Like literally one of the worst things you can experience as a person on the planet. And I've got to go in the middle of a pandemic to beat the hell out of this guy decisively. Like that's a really weird place to be. I wouldn't want to be in that position.
I agree.
I mean, that's why they should have just paid everyone to stay at home. Like, lessen that mental strain, at least lessen the, I don't know.
I know.
Weird.
Well, we'll be watching. That's for sure.
Yeah, of course.
This is not because last night was on ESPN Plus, but I think it's going to be on big ESPN, right? So this is the first true ESPN because the other one was a pay-per-view. I know the pay-per-view did very well. Like over 700,000 pay-per-views or something like that, which much more than.
Yeah, if it's true though, because I mean, the sources like ESPN, like it's on their own networks. No one can actually make estimates, like independent estimates now. It's either someone from ESPN or from UFC who willingly released it. So
yeah,
if it's true, it's a massive, massive card. Like exceeded every single expectation. Like none of those two are proven pay-per-view draws, and then they draw numbers that are higher than some of John Jones's fights. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But on the other hand, there's no live sports, live events, and in the whole world. So they did, have that factor. But yeah, I think people were with the, economy and everything. I think that, definitely it was interesting to see that Endeavor announced they had restructured with a loan on the Monday following that. And I'm like, they obviously have shown their product, they got one off.
It's actually going to be interesting to see the ratings on this ESPN card, because like it's not as stacked as that pay-per-view was really good, really deep, and this is an okay card. So we'll really see if like are the casual fans that starved for content that they're actually going to watch a UFC, they're going to be converted and watch a UFC show, or is this like just more UFC fans just tuning in because they're bored, but it's still the same like fan base that you already have? Because if you're just doing the same numbers, then I guess the pandemic really didn't do much. So it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be very interesting. Well, thank you, Anton, for coming and joining us in class. Really, I thought we got some great conversations about, what is translating fighting into prose, what that means, and also kind of what it's like. Why don't we see fear a lot of times from fighters? So there were so many things. It was Andy Kaufman came up. You always love a class when that happens. So
Yep.
people can find you. Can you give your Twitter and like any other places where they can find your work?
You can find me, of course, on bloodyelbow.com, but my Twitter is @Anton Tabuena. So about it. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brian, you're where we can find your work.
You can just go to the Art Fight Podcast website, or wherever you can find us at Art Fight Podcast and many other places. But that's a good start. Thanks, Anton. I really, really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. I enjoyed it too. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Come back again. We would love to.
Definitely.
As I'm going to put the housekeeper on my syllabus, I would love to bring you in a discussion because you know him, Josh, and that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. Well, thank you and have a good one. And we're back at Writing and Fighting at 4 p.m. today. So I don't know what that's 4 a.m. Anton, but you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm here. So.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Bye.